Moder the Jötunn. Deep in the forests of northern Sweden lurks an ancient creature born from Norse mythology itself. Moder is described as a bastard offspring of Loki, belonging to the Jötunn, the primordial giant-like deities that once rivaled the gods of Asgard. Moder appears as a nightmarish fusion of elk and human features, towering over the forest with bright yellow eyes, a skeletal head crowned with massive antlers, and disturbing human-like hands protruding from her skull. Her body is overgrown with plant matter, allowing her to blend seamlessly into her woodland domain. What makes Moder particularly sinister is her method of hunting. She stalks travelers who enter her forest, specifically targeting those carrying emotional trauma. These marked individuals face a horrifying choice: worship her and receive eternal life, or suffer a brutal death impaled on the trees like sacrificial offerings. For centuries, Moder has built a cult from missing hikers, granting her followers immortality in exchange for periodic human sacrifices. Her supernatural abilities include shape-shifting, creating terrifying illusions based on victims' worst memories, and wielding absolute power within her forest domain. However, her influence cannot extend beyond the woodland boundaries, making her both incredibly powerful and tragically confined. The Pale Man. The Pale Man is a grotesque humanoid monster from Pan's Labyrinth that embodies pure gluttony and child predation. This skeletal thin creature sits in eternal slumber at a banquet table, his most horrifying feature being the eyeballs embedded in the palms of his hands. The Pale Man was once a glutton who hoarded excess food and resources. As punishment for his crimes, he was banished to the netherworld, where his appetite transformed into something far more sinister, a hunger specifically for children. His lair tells the story of his victims through disturbing paintings depicting him devouring helpless children, alongside piles of small shoes and clothing that serve as grotesque trophies. When young Ophelia enters his domain to retrieve a golden dagger, she's warned never to eat from the lavish feast spread before the sleeping monster. Set against the backdrop of post-Civil War Spain, where food was scarce, this banquet represents an almost irresistible temptation for any starving child. Despite warnings, Ophelia succumbs and eats 2 grapes from the table. This awakens the Pale Man, who places his eyeballs into his palms and begins his hunt. Though slow-moving, his methodical pursuit and casual consumption of Ophelia's fairy guides demonstrates his relentless, inhuman nature. Raatma. Deep beneath the sewers of Westerville, Ohio lurks Raatma, a terrifying half-rat, half-human hybrid that has become the center of a disturbing urban legend. This pale-skinned creature possesses enormous pointed ears, wide black eyes, and an unnaturally huge smile stretched across its elongated head. The story unfolds when Channel 6 reporter Holly and her cameraman Jeff investigate reports of the mysterious Rat Man living in the storm drains. What begins as a routine news story quickly turns into a nightmare when they encounter homeless people living in the sewers who have become devoted followers of Raatma. These cultists worship the creature as part of their belief in creating a new world order. Raatma possesses a horrifying ability. It produces a corrosive black bile that can melt human flesh on contact. The creature's followers collect this deadly substance and use it as both a weapon and a means of conversion. After Jeff falls victim to the acidic fluid, Holly appears to escape and returns to her news station. However, her rescue was merely the beginning of Raatma's true plan. During a live broadcast, Holly begins mixing the creature's name into her report before projectile vomiting the same black substance onto her co-anchor, revealing that she too has become one of Raatma's devoted followers, spreading the creature's influence beyond the sewers. Pinhead. Pinhead stands apart from typical slasher villains through his disturbing intelligence and well-spoken nature. Originally Captain Elliot Spencer, a British soldier traumatized by World War I, he lost faith in humanity and God after witnessing the horrors of war. His bitter wandering led him to discover the Lament configuration puzzle box in 1921, which transformed him into the leader of the Cenobites, demonic torturers from hell. What makes Pinhead particularly terrifying is his careful approach to causing pain. Unlike mindless killers, he's a smart creature who sees pain and pleasure as connected experiences. His distinctive appearance features a grid of scars carved into his bald head with jeweled pins at every crossing point, giving him his famous name. As leader of the Order of the Gash, he commands other Cenobites in their twisted religion. Pinhead's preferred method involves hooked chains that tear victims apart, but his true skill lies in mental torture. He often prefers dragging victims into endless suffering rather than quick death. Throughout the Hellraiser series, he encounters various people who solve the puzzle box, each time offering his warped view of pain as something greater. His cold, calculating behavior combined with his educated speech creates a uniquely disturbing villain who represents the horrifying combination of intelligence and cruelty. Pennywise. Pennywise the Dancing Clown is the terrifying form taken by an ancient cosmic entity known simply as It. This creature is billions of years old, originating from a void called the Macroverse that exists outside of time and space. It came to Earth millions of years ago with one purpose: to feed on human fear. The entity settled beneath the town of Derry, Maine, where it follows a deadly 27-year cycle. It hibernates for long periods, then awakens to hunt and terrorize the town's residents, particularly children whose fears are easier to manipulate. While it can shapeshift into any form, it most commonly appears as Pennywise, a colorful clown designed to lure children into trusting it before striking. Its true form is incomprehensible to human minds, described as a massive spider-like creature, though even this isn't its actual appearance. Anyone who glimpses its true essence, called the Deadlights, either dies instantly or goes insane. The creature's reign of terror is challenged by a group of local children known as the Losers Club, who first encounter it in 1957. Though they manage to wound and drive it back into hibernation, they're forced to return as adults 27 years later to face the entity one final time and end its cycle of violence forever. The Babadook. The Babadook is a supernatural entity that appears as a towering, shadowy figure dressed in a black coat and hat with long claw-like hands and a pale, frightening face. This creature manifests through a mysterious pop-up book that appears in homes, and its name comes from the distinctive sound it makes, Babadook, accompanied by 3 short knocks. The story follows single mother Amelia and her son Samuel, who become the Babadook's targets after reading its poem from the pop-up book. As their fear grows, the creature becomes more powerful and monstrous. When Amelia tries to destroy the book by tearing it apart and burning it, the Babadook repairs it and adds new threatening content, including disturbing illustrations showing violence against her family. The entity's presence drives Amelia to the edge of madness, eventually possessing her and forcing her to harm their dog. However, when she finally confronts the creature to protect Samuel, it retreats to her basement where her deceased husband's belongings are stored. The Babadook represents the embodiment of grief itself, particularly Amelia's unprocessed mourning over her husband's death. The creature only loses its power when she stops running from her emotions and accepts her loss, allowing her to live peacefully while keeping the Babadook contained but not destroyed. The Thing. The Thing is an extraterrestrial organism that crash-landed on Earth roughly 100,000 years ago, becoming trapped in Antarctic ice until Norwegian researchers discovered it in 1982. This creature possesses one of the most terrifying abilities imaginable. It can perfectly assimilate and imitate any living organism it comes into contact with. When the Thing assimilates a host, it analyzes and copies their cellular structure, eventually taking over the entire body. The resulting imitation is flawless, complete with all memories, mannerisms, and even physical defects of the original person. What makes this particularly horrifying is that the creature can operate independently even when separated. If a piece is cut off, both parts become their own functioning entities. The organism's primary weakness is fire, which destroys it at the cellular level, and it cannot replicate non-living materials like metal tooth fillings. Its intelligence scales with its size. Larger forms are highly intelligent, while smaller pieces act on basic survival instincts. The story follows research teams as paranoia sets in, with members unable to trust each other since anyone could be an imitation. The creature's ultimate goal is simple survival and reproduction, making it willing to sacrifice other versions of itself to maintain cover. If left unchecked, it could potentially assimilate all life on Earth. The Fly. Dr. André Delambre was a brilliant inventor working for the Air Ministry who developed a revolutionary machine called a transmitter that could transport objects and living beings from one place to another. After months of experimenting with inanimate objects and animals, he felt confident enough to test the device on himself. During his human trial, a common housefly accidentally entered the transmission chamber with him. The machine mixed their atomic structures together, creating two horrifying hybrid creatures. Delambre emerged with a giant fly head replacing his own and an insect leg where his right arm should be. Meanwhile, the fly gained Delambre's white human head and arm. Despite keeping his human intelligence and ability to think, Delambre could no longer speak due to his insect head and had trouble seeing small objects. He communicated through typewritten notes to his wife Helene, desperately asking her to find the fly with human features so they could reverse the process by going through the transmitter together. After multiple failed attempts to return to normal, including 7 solo tries that only made his condition worse by mixing in DNA from his missing cat, Delambre accepted his fate. He asked Helene to end his suffering by crushing his fly head under a steam hammer at his brother's factory, keeping his tragic experiment secret from the world.